Oh, perfect. We've started. Excellent. Thank you. Great. Well, in that case, we've started. So welcome those who are on the line to Circular Apparel, designing for Next Life and new models. Just before we start, to let you know, this session is being recorded and will be available for the next 2 weeks for you to watch. And if during the process of it, it's quite a quick whirlwind of a conversation for this session. But if you have any questions that you'd like to ask our panelists today, please do put those in the Q&A box on the side. So I am Laura Balmond. I am the Make Fashion Circular lead at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Alice Hartley, who is the Director of Product Sustainability at Gap Inc., and Jeannie Renne-Malone, who is the Vice President of Global Sustainability at VF Corporation. And the topic we're talking about today is circular economy. The reason being, across within the fashion industry, less than 1% of all materials that go into making clothes are ever taken back and made back into new clothes. It's hugely wasteful and polluting. And on top of this, by not using clothes or materials enough, it's missing out on quite a huge amount of money. Almost 500 billion US dollars each year are wasted because of clothes not being used enough. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about the vision of how do you get towards achieving a circular economy in fashion, and what are the implications on design. So at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we defined the vision of a circular economy as one where clothes are used more, they are made to be made again from safe, recycled and renewable inputs. And so I'm going to jump in. We've not got a huge amount of time. I'm going to come to you, Jeannie, and ask, when moving towards that vision, a huge piece of that is actually making sure that the design decisions at the very, very beginning are taken in a way that can enable circular economy. Can you share a little bit more about what does it actually look like in practice for an organization to implement this?
Sure. Thanks so much, Laura, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be here today with, along with Alice. This is terrific. Maybe I'll first start by just reminding everyone who VF Corporation is. So we are one of the largest apparel, footwear, and accessories companies globally. We connect people to lifestyles, activities, and experience through our family of iconic outdoor, active, and workwear brands, including Vans, The North Face, Timberland, Smartwool, and Dickies. And similar to how you set the stage, Laura, for Ellen MacArthur Foundation's view on circularity, we also take a holistic view to circularity and the move from linear to circular, from the use of sustainable materials right at the beginning. So designing for recyclability, designing for durability, really designing out waste and designing for the longevity of the product overall. We also look at reducing resource consumption and industrial waste, so through the processing and manufacturing part of our product development, and then extending the product lifestyle. So this is everything we do through consumer engagement and incentives for take-back programs, wash, repair, and resell for e-commerce, rental programs, and product disassemble to create new products. So we have a number of brands that have a different pilot projects and pilots out there that have actually gone to market and really have seen a success from designing for recyclability, such as our Napa Peri Circular Series, and then some of the work that recently we've seen with the North Face, and putting some new products out there using our old Nuptse jackets, which I'll go to more in a moment. But really the ultimate idea here is to really think at the very beginning of the stage of how we design our products, thinking about those materials and the product itself at the end of life.
Great, thank you for sharing. And I guess also, Alice, to you, I guess the same question, what has implementing design for circular economy look like at Gap?
Yeah, I'd say, so we also are a portfolio company, including Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy, and Athleta. And so it can and should look a bit different at each brand. We really encourage them to put sustainability through the leading lens of their brand values and their identities. So with Gap and Banana Republic, what that has looked like was the pilots with the Ellen MacArthur Jeans redesign project. They both participated and have product on the market as of this spring. So that was an exercise in taking a very specific targeted product and thinking all the way through the design considerations. But then on the business model side, Banana Republic has gone forth in both rental and in vintage. If anybody follows the Banana Republic Instagram account, they have teased that they're launching or expanding a vintage store coming, unspecified date, but coming pretty soon. So they've been going at it from the business models angle. And then as a company, as Gap Inc., we also think it's important to look at the issues that no single brand is going to be able to tackle on their own. And so that's why, in partnership with VF, as well as Target and Nike, we've been part of the Accelerating Circularity Initiative focused on North America.
And I think just to pick up, you mentioned the jeans redesign and the other projects. Can you just explain a little bit more about how that is actually changing the design of the products? So what have been some of the key places to start?
Yeah, so what the jeans redesign has challenged those design teams to do is to look holistically at the product, looking at materials as well as durability, traceability in some cases. And so it's really challenged them to think more long-term about the full life cycle of that garment. So not just how do we make it as great as possible for the point where it gets sold to the customer, but what's going to be the life of that jean beyond then, and then what's going to happen to it when it eventually reaches the end of its life. And that's a real mindset shift that it has invited the design teams to make, really starting to think more, starting from that perspective of what is this product going to look like, how will it show up when it reaches a recycler, and does this recycler know what to do with it? And then all the decisions, you can kind of like track them back from that mindset. So then, and that leads to changes like maybe redesigning some details, looking at the types of trims that we're going to use. Are they compatible with recycling technologies or not? But I'd say like the main way it has changed how the design teams work is giving them this different target that goes beyond just that first sale to the customer.
It's a really interesting one, I think, the idea. Obviously, I know a lot about the jeans redesign, having been involved in the creation of that piece. But I think one of the things that was very interesting for us at the beginning was connecting the dots between, the people who are designing and making products with understanding what implications that has later on for the recyclers who have to then try and create a valuable product out of what they receive. One of the biggest things that we said with the project was actually the ambition is being raised because quite often in pilot projects, you focus on one specific thing that you're trying to, first of all, get to grips with. In the jeans redesign, we asked, we want you to have a go at everything all together, all areas of the vision towards a circular economy. So we ask you to both make it durable, but also something that could be easily recycled. And this, of course, poses somewhat of a tension. Jeannie, I don't know if you've got any experience from the circular series jacket, because I know this was a very similar approach to something that you could make sure that it was a long-lasting product, but equally could be recycled, that you can share with us.
Yeah, excuse me, absolutely. And I love the example that Alice just gave as well. So our Napa Perry's circular series, it's a series of products that are 100% recyclable thanks to their mono-material composition. And so the filling and trims are made from nylon 6, which is the fabric made from Equinil, and regenerated nylon, and it's a high-performance nylon 6 yarn. So that's where the durability comes in, and it's also the other aspect of it's recycled from discarded fishing nets and other waste materials. So it really tells a great story about how we're trying to address a problem, an environmental impact issue while creating a new product. So the monomaterial composition allows for an easy recycling process because they can be upcycled without losing any of their original characteristic or qualities, so that the jackets can be recycled again and again. So, and then to close the loop and make the innovation truly circular, we developed a unique digital take-back program as well. So we're really excited about this particular, the jacket, and then which launched the circular series. As of 2021, this circular jacket actually will be cradle to cradle gold certified, which is pretty exciting as well. So I think that demonstrates the design intent from the very beginning, thinking about many aspects of the product, the material itself, and also what will that end of life be like, and also the durability aspect throughout. One thing I was going to mention earlier too, and I failed to, is that we have taken a big step in really designing all of our product designers in circular design principles. So that's been an effort that we took globally, and so it really helps when we're talking with our product designers about circularity, everyone has that same level of information and training as we are embarking on our global circularity journey.
I think that's a really interesting point as well, with the sort of capacity building and understanding and building the knowledge internally. Alice, I don't know, from the jeans redesign or some of the other projects you've been working at, I mean, how has that played out at Gap in terms of that knowledge? And is that something you will take forward to other projects?
Yeah, definitely. I think one way the jeans redesign really helped us to accelerate this process was by setting those clear guidelines. I think in the absence of that, you get a few steps into it and then you have to pause and say, oh, well, I didn't consider, this type of material. Is this going to be compatible with recycling or not? Or am I, you might encounter a trade-off between durability and recyclability and need to pause the project and try to figure out what's the best thing to do. So there's definitely this feeling of building the plane while flying it in the absence of those guidelines. So that has really helped to set those parameters. And then as we look to expand to other product categories, that's going to be the journey getting into that level of detail beyond denim. And we have such a diverse assortment of products. But I think one thing we've learned as we've come up the learning curve on circularity is that we can't expect there to be a single circular path for everything that all of our brands make. So one product its circular path might be to be designed to be as durable as possible, be targeted towards rental, and maybe it's going to have 6 or 7 users over its total life cycle. And then there might be a different pocket of the assortment where you're designing, T-shirts and something that someone's really going to wear to death, and it's not going to have a second user, and it needs to be optimized for recyclability would be its kind of primary circularity path. So I think we're learning and getting more sophisticated about teasing out those different circular paths that a product might follow, and then how the design and the business model need to work together.
I love that. I love the idea of building the plane whilst flying it. I think that definitely describes a lot of the work that's been happening. But as you mentioned, the outcomes of being, are quite interesting, because you get the opportunity to learn and iterate quite quickly, far more than you perhaps would if you, you didn't just get started with what might seem like a bit scary action at the time, but actually what comes out of it is pretty positive. We've hearing some of the great things that have been coming out of the project so far. I guess I'd like to ask you a little bit about maybe what have been some of the limitations or challenges, and so where do we see the biggest opportunities now to continue scaling adoption of these sorts of design? Maybe Jeannie, you can take that one first. Oh, we're just on mute, Jeannie.
Many of our brands are piloting different products and a full series like Napa Puri. In terms of limitations, I think we're still kind of dabbling in what the consumer preferences might be, and also what are the materials available. And also, when we look across kind of holistically, recycling infrastructure is still limited in terms of how we can really disassemble our products and then reuse materials to a certain degree. So our partnership with Accelerating Circularity has really helped us learn a lot about what different options are out there as they move into the pilot phase of this next piece of work that they're embarking on. So I think we're learning a lot as we try out different types of products and different types of materials. And so I think there's really so much open space right now for experimentation and opportunity for innovation. So really excited to see where this goes next. Timberland just set a goal that by 2030, they will achieve 100% of their products will be designed for circularity. And so that means all products will be made from materials that would have been otherwise gone to waste, like plastic bottles, scrap leather, scrap wool, and also that products will be designed to be recyclable at the end of life. So even though that seems like a long way out, 2030, as we all know, will be here before we know it. So we really need to be moving quickly and from an innovation perspective and trying out different materials and getting them into our products and testing them for this vision that we have for the future.
Right. And go ahead, Alice.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to some of the barriers too, and what some of the challenges that we've run into in the course of the jeans redesign. So I think it has those challenges have showed up differently for the different brands. With Banana Republic, they actually were able to scale the volume that they were designing into the guidelines pretty quickly. It ended up being 25% of their denim assortment for the launch season in spring of 2021. And they're continuing to increase the number of units that they're buying of that collection. And they're just at a higher price point than some of our other brands. And so one of the requirements that was a key limiter to scaling at Gap was around the requirement for organic cotton. There's just carries a higher price today. You might know there's sort of a global shortage at the moment of organic cotton. And so that was trickier for a lower price point brand to scale because of that requirement. And then another barrier was around the fiber composition. So the limitation by today's recycling technology that spandex content can be, or any synthetic content can be no more than 2% of the jean. That works in some aesthetics that you might be going after, but for a pretty wide assortment of what the customer is asking for, they want some element of stretch or the softness that polyester brings. So that's just another today's limitation of what can be readily recycled, sort of translating into a limitation of how that was able to scale with Gap brand, just as like a snapshot of what is possible today. But I will say a lot of those lessons from the jeans redesign did scale in other ways at that brand. Gap has just launched a new collection called Generation Good, which launched in March. And it was going wider than denim, so incorporating tees as well as denim for the whole family, and then thinking through these 5 very strong pillars of sustainability, including adding an element of a take-back program, which was something new that the brand just hadn't done before. So I think with this initial sort of foray into circularity through the jeans redesign, that path unfolded as the brand has been going, and then leading to this take back partnership with Give Back Box. I definitely think was launched following up on the momentum from that original circularity project.
And I think that's interesting because, I mean, both of you have mentioned sort of take back, which is the piece sort of logically thinking through, you can start with the design and the upstream elements, which is fantastic. But for as long as that's not taken back and those materials actually captured through some sort of mechanism, it doesn't complete the whole picture. So really great to see that you're talking about those. I also just wanted to add a little bit more context, I guess, on the jeans redesign. Alice and I are quite familiar with this one, but just for those watching, this was a project that we initiated whereby we basically asked the question, how do you design a product today in line with circular economy principles, given the current technologies we have, in terms of recycling and materials? What would that look like as our sort of best effort for where we could get to right now? And we worked with a number of organizations, Gap was one of them, to really be clear on what would be the minimum ambition for those guidelines, and went beyond that actually to publish them. They're available publicly, but also sign up over 70 organizations towards achieving those guidelines with the Gap jeans and others already on the market since we set that project up in 2019. So it was really an opportunity to see how organizations can align in one direction, and therefore the piece that Alice was mentioning, one of the criteria we had was around recycled content, and saying if you want to be able to recycle your fabrics today with today's technologies, it's really tricky if that contains a mix of different types of material. And so we actually were quite ambitious and set a very tight limit on how much spandex, polyester you could include in the actual fabric. And that's why, this was obviously a challenge in terms of still being able to achieve the style and the look and the feel of the jeans that we want, and something else to continue to address. I think one thing that we also get asked quite a lot, and I guess interesting to hear both of your perspectives on this one, and you touched on it a little bit there, Alice, is, it's great to design upstream and put all these wonderful new innovations into products, but doesn't that significantly ramp up the cost? I mean, how can this already be cost competitive, and what's needed to make sure that this is something that can continue to be appealing to your customers? Jeannie, do you want to maybe take that one?
Sure. So I think it's a great question. And I think as we see increased demand for sustainability and sustainable products and circular products, I think that will certainly over time I'll address the cost side of the equation. We already see that consumers today are 2/3 of them are making purchasing decisions based on climate change, and we only see that increasing. Our consumer insights data shows that consumers these days are really interested in that thriftiness and also in durability and longevity of products, also that creative type of product that you can purchase. We have a partnership with Christopher Rayburn, and he just launched another collaboration with the North Face, and it's this Nuptse panda knapsack or knapsack, and so rucksack. And what's so exciting about it is these are Nuptse jackets that can't be reused for whatever reason, but they've been able to create a new product using it. So those materials are absolutely reused. There's a cool new product that you can purchase. And so we're seeing this with a number of different types of materials that can be repurposed into something brand new. One of my colleagues calls it sort of the Frankensteinian approach to putting together different, form that used to be jackets or t-shirts or different types of products into something new. And that demonstrates the durability of the materials themselves that can be used into something brand new. So I think the innovation factor is really going to address cost over time as well as the innovations, and just overall the demand for these types of products is going to continue to increase.
Yeah, and I spoke to the organic cotton costs, but I think we really were challenged to try to optimize for cost. We didn't want this to just be a kind of one product wonder that we could only afford to do on a super premium niche in the assortment. I think the design team did take those costs into consideration in balancing everything from the blends of fiber that were used to the choice of hardware, just removing things like rivets that would remove a cost. So I think it wasn't that it added cost everywhere in every decision. It was about looking at where certain elements might cost more, and then what could you take away in order to make that up elsewhere. So with the washes, for example, that was one place where those got streamlined a lot, not only because of the limited chemical palette, but also as ways to save on cost.
So real balancing act. I'm going to have a look at a couple of questions that we've got in the chat here. One of them sort of related, I guess, to durability and customers as well, Jeannie, which you've mentioned a few times. One of them says, the new HIG product module includes garment care in the calculation of circularity in the garment. How do suppliers intend to incorporate updated circular care instructions into product labels? I guess with the vein of, if we want new business models to operate well, one thing is to design the product in a circular way, but a second thing is to help the customer actually look after that. I don't know, Alice, do you have a thought on that one?
I don't have a lot of specific thoughts other than I think that's a really valid point. If you look at a life cycle analysis of something like a pair of jeans, there's a lot of water and energy that are used in that consumer use phase. So I think that's the next chapter is both doing our part in the decisions that are under our control, but then what can we do to educate consumers about the way they take care of a product that either can shorten its life or extend it. So I think it's more just, I would support that thought.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to that during Earth Day this year, for Earth Day campaign that our Icebreaker brand launched, is really how to minimize washing for merino wool based products. And so you don't have to continue to wash it over and over or after each wear, simply hang it up. And so there was this campaign they launched that wear your t-shirt 7 times and to kind of represent Earth Week. And I participated in the challenge, and I can completely admit that you don't need to wash your shirt every single time. And so that's a real kind of consumer awareness and education opportunity that we all can do as we look at the materials we're putting in our products and then the care of them as well.
We just need wardrobes that can take the garment from us and hang it up so that it's ready to wear again. I think that's maybe the area for innovation in that space.
Right.
Great. I think looking as well, the questions we had, I think we touched on this briefly, but in case you have anything else to add, I mean, there is a question around durability and recyclability, and these obviously being opposing. And if there's any particular, sort of major trade-offs that you've had to make in the meantime to address that it can meet both of these.
I would say with the jeans, there were some ways of finding a compromise between those. So if you take the reinforcement on a pocket, that often would be done with a rivet. Those were outside the scope of this project. So we found other ways through something called a bar tack of reinforcing that point, because the last thing you'd want to have happen is for the pocket to be a failure point for the garment because you cut some corners on reinforcing it. So in that case, with sort of the what's the mission of a jean? It's not to be worn a few times and be highly recyclable. It's something we want to last a long time. So I think that prioritizing those details that help it to be more durable, that kind of came first. But then setting limits around fiber composition help it to be more recyclable.
Jeannie, any thoughts from your side on that one? I know with the circular series, we touched on it a little bit. Are there any other specific elements that the team had to innovate towards, or is that one that's still work in progress?
I think that's still a work in progress. So more to come there. Great.
Well, we've also had another question that I think maybe is a nice one to sort of lead towards the end of the session. We're already heading there very quickly. Is actually around, for people that are just getting started with this, obviously it can be quite a lot to understand and take in, and particularly when you look at redesigning a whole product. Are you aware, can you share any tips, resources, places to start when looking at taking steps towards circularity?
I would recommend all the videos that are on the EMF website. I think those are some nice short bits of content that are easily digestible, and many of them geared towards a design audience. I think it's easy to get pretty quickly overwhelmed too, because everything is so interconnected. So I think trying to remain grounded in some of the big principles, and again, thinking like a recycler, sort of letting some of those principles be your guiding light, and not getting too tripped up on trying to make everything perfect right off the bat, because it's definitely a learning process.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention the same, that to definitely check out the EMF website. And there's also some really interesting programs out there. We just sponsored the Redress program that's based out of Hong Kong that allows young designers to really dabble in different types of design, and circularity was definitely a big focus this year. So we saw a lot of different innovations coming through, and using all types of different materials, and really leaning into a full circularity approach. So I think that's another area. There's tons of resources out there that I think anyone can have access to. And then on the re-commerce side, there's a lot of new platforms that are popping up that are pretty exciting. There's one that we're involved with called Out and Back, that is a purely outdoor wear platform for re-commerce items. And so there's just a lot of new innovations out there, a lot of great resources. So definitely take a search.
Great. Well, we're very quickly heading towards the end of our session, but I think, from just a few sort of key takeaways from our discussion, I mean, clearly, purely just getting started, I think both of you mentioned that, it's a bit scary, but actually just finding an entry point to attack that and start to build your plane whilst you're moving, as Alice said, that clearly reveals very quick wins in terms of understanding, where you can move forwards most, I guess most impactfully, but also perhaps maybe it highlights where the biggest challenges are, but at least you then know where the right questions are to start to address that. As we said, there's a lot of resources on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website, and I think also looking at case studies of other organizations that have done it. I know we will continue to profile the work of the Jeans Redesign participants, and we've also looked at how we can share the stories of things like the Napa Piri Circular Series for others to learn from the work that has gone before them. So I guess it just remains to say thank you so much, Alice and Jeannie, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And thank you everyone else that has joined us for this session, and continue to stay tuned for the rest of Circularity 21.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.